The shuttle glided back toward Arcadia Station under stealth mode. Inside, Princess Elira sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the glowing screens at the front. She could feel the vibration of the engines in her bones, but her mind was far away. She had survived chases, drones, betrayal, and the dark tunnels. Now she understood that the real danger was still ahead. Sergeant Daniel Cross stood at the control panel, scanning for threats. His jaw was set, his eyes steady. Elira glanced at him. Every time she looked at the human soldier, she felt both reassured and challenged. He seemed carved from determination. He did not fidget, did not panic, and did not falter. She wondered how much of her own calm had been borrowed from his example. They docked at a hidden port on the lower level of the station. The mercenaries who had chosen to ally with them stayed behind to mislead the enemy. Cross guided Elira and her personal guards through a narrow maintenance corridor, leading them toward a communications hub buried deep inside the station. "This is where you can make a difference," Cross said quietly. "We can stop the plan to destroy the station if we tell everyone the truth. But it has to come from you." Elira straightened. "From me? You are the princess. They will listen to you. You can call the station's leaders, the Earth Alliance, and your own people at the same time. You can break the enemy's control." She nodded slowly. She had been trained to give speeches, to stand before crowds, but never under threat of death. This time her words would decide not just her reputation, but the lives of thousands. The communications hub was a small room filled with glowing panels, blinking lights, and soft hums. Cross locked the door and checked his sensors. "Clear for now," he said. Elira stepped up to the console. She could see the multiple feeds waiting to be activated. The Earth Alliance Council, the Velan High Command, the station's emergency broadcast system. She took a deep breath and looked at Cross. "I will do it," she said simply. He gave a short nod. "I'll hold the door." She adjusted her long sleeves and lifted her chin. She remembered her lessons: breathe, slow your voice, project calm. But she also remembered what she had learned beside this human soldier. Composure was not only about looking calm. It was about choosing to act when it mattered most. She activated the broadcast. All across the station, speakers came alive. Screens flickered to her image. Humans, aliens, and mercenaries alike saw the young princess standing tall in a small control room. "People of the Arcadia Station," she began, her voice clear but calm. "I am Princess Elira of the Velan Empire. I speak now to every person, human or Velan, worker or leader. You are in danger." She told them about the sabotage, the assassination attempts, and the plan to destroy the station. She named the faction responsible without malice, but with firmness. She asked the neutral factions to step aside, to help stop the saboteurs. As she spoke, she could feel her hands trembling, but her voice did not waver. The lessons she had learned, while from her court, from her training, and from Cross, came together in this moment. Cross stood by the door, weapon ready. He could hear footsteps approaching in the corridor outside. "Keep going," he murmured under his breath. Elira's message shifted. "I once believed humans were reckless," she said, her eyes moving to the camera. "But in these last hours I have seen courage, loyalty, and honor. I stand with the human soldier who has protected me. I ask you to stand with us too." She ended the broadcast with a direct plea. "Do not give in to fear. We can stop this together." When she shut down the transmission, the room felt very quiet. She exhaled sharply and turned to Cross. "It is done." He nodded. "You did well. Now we have to defend this position until help arrives." As if on cue, the door shook under a sudden impact. Cross swung his weapon up. "They're here," he said calmly. The corridor outside filled with noise, boots, clanging metal, the hum of energy weapons. Elira moved to one side, her guards forming a protective line. Cross crouched at the door's frame, using the corner as cover. The first attackers forced the door open with a cutting torch. Cross fired short bursts, driving them back. "Stay down!" he barked. Elira crouched but kept her head high, refusing to look terrified. Her guards returned fire with their own weapons. Sparks rained from the doorway as bolts of energy hit the metal walls. Minutes passed like hours. Cross moved with quick, efficient motions, reloading without looking. He directed the guards with sharp hand signals, covering every angle. Elira noticed that he never wasted a shot, never hesitated. Her composure was tested. This was no court chamber. This was survival. Yet she kept her breathing steady, repeating silently, Composure is action, composure is courage. Between volleys, Cross reached for a small device at his belt. "They're trying to flank us," he said. "I'm going to rig a trap." He tossed the device into the corridor. A moment later, a bright flash erupted, stunning the attackers and forcing them back. Alira watched in awe. This was improvisation, this was human adaptability at its sharpest. The attackers regrouped. This time they sent in a heavier drone, a spider-like machine with multiple legs and a built-in energy cannon. It stomped toward the door, firing at the walls. Alira's guards tried to hit it, but the machine's armor deflected most of their shots. Cross narrowed his eyes, pulled out a cable, and connected it to the control panel. "What are you doing?" Alira asked. "Reprogramming," he said quickly. "If I can override its targeting system, it will turn on them instead of us." She watched as his fingers flew across the controls. Sparks shot out and the drone shuddered, paused, then swiveled its cannon toward its own allies. The corridor erupted into chaos as the drone fired at the attackers. Cross grinned slightly. "That's our window, move." They retreated deeper into the hub, finding a secondary door that led to a maintenance tunnel. Cross guided them through, his senses alert. Behind them, the sounds of fighting echoed, but the attackers were slowed. Alira's heart pounded, but she moved steadily, refusing to break stride. Her guards followed, inspired by her calm. After several turns, they reached a sealed hatch. Cross opened it, revealing a narrow crawl space leading to the station's defense control room. "This is where we can stop them completely," he said. "From here, we can access the defense satellites, but it will be risky." They climbed inside. The room beyond was filled with consoles and star maps. Cross immediately went to work, linking his wrist device to the mainframe. Alira approached another console, scanning the data. "They are moving a ship into position," she said. "It carries the detonators. If it gets too close, the station will be lost." "Then we stop it," Cross replied. Working side by side, they began redirecting the station's external weapons. Alira's hands moved quickly, her long fingers dancing over the controls. Cross uploaded new targeting coordinates. The defense satellite responded, swiveling toward the incoming ship. A moment later, a bright beam lanced out, striking the enemy vessel. It shuddered, venting gas, and veered off course. "They're retreating," Alira whispered. "Not yet," Cross said. "They'll try again." "But we've bought time." A sudden alarm blared. Alira turned and saw a live feed on one of the screens. The double agent, her own advisor who had betrayed her, had captured Cross's image from earlier broadcasts and was speaking to the station. "They're lying to you," the agent said on the feed. "The princess is a hostage. The human soldier is a criminal. Turn them over or the station will burn." Alira's blood ran cold. "They're twisting everything." Cross's face was unreadable. "We knew this was coming." Before she could reply, the door to the defense room slid open. Standing there was the double agent himself, flanked by two heavily armed guards. In his hand, he held a shock weapon. He smiled coldly. "Princess Sergeant, end of the line." Cross moved instinctively to shield Alira, but the agent raised his weapon. "Drop it, soldier, or she dies." The room froze. Alira's mind raced. She had spoken to crowds, rallied mercenaries, survived attacks, but this was different. Cross's life was at stake. The agent stepped forward, pressing the weapon's barrel against Cross's shoulder. "Surrender now. You have nowhere else to go." Cross didn't move. His eyes stayed on Alira's. She drew a slow, steady breath. She remembered her broadcast, her call for unity, her new understanding of composure. It was her turn to act. "Stop," she said firmly, her voice carrying authority. "You think you hold all the power, but you have already lost. The station knows the truth. Your allies are fleeing. Even now, reinforcements are coming. Release him and I will grant you a fair trial." The agent laughed. "You're bluffing, am I?" she asked softly. Cross's eyes flicked to a console behind the agent. With a subtle hand motion, he indicated a plan. Alira understood at once. She lifted her chin. "You underestimate humans," she said. "And you underestimate me." The agent hesitated. In that instant, Cross twisted, knocking the weapon aside. A shot went wild, striking the wall. Alira dove for the console, hitting a control that sealed the doors and activated a stun field. The guards crumpled. The agent staggered, stunned but not yet down. Cross lunged forward, tackling him to the floor. Alira stood tall, her heart hammering but her voice steady. "It's over," she said. The agent glared at her but saw no escape. Cross cuffed him with magnetic restraints. She looked at the human soldier, relief flooding through her. He nodded once, calm as always. Through the window of the defense room, the defense room hummed with energy as Princess Elira and Sergeant Daniel Cross stood over the captured double agent. Outside, the station was still tense. Security reports showed pockets of hostile forces moving through empty corridors, but the majority of the station's inhabitants were rallying to the princess's call. Elira's mind raced. She had survived attacks, drones, betrayal, and deception, but now the stakes were higher than ever. The double agent in front of her had almost cost Cross his life. She would not let him or the station fail now. Cross checked the restraints on the agent. "He's secure for now," he said calmly, "but he won't talk easily. You want him alive or—" Elira shook her head. "Alive. Information is more valuable than revenge. We need to know how deep this plot goes." He nodded. "Agreed." The princess turned to the console and accessed the station-wide surveillance feed. Red dots indicated hostile units still moving through the station. Blue dots marked those loyal to her, including the mercenaries who had joined their cause. She saw the threat, but she also saw hope. "I will coordinate defense teams," she said. "We can use the station's automated systems to contain them." Cross raised an eyebrow. "You're becoming very decisive." Elira smiled faintly. "I learned from you." Outside the defense room, the double agent struggled, but Cross kept him restrained. "He underestimated you," Cross said. "They all did." "I know," Elira replied. "They underestimated humans too. But I've seen the value of courage firsthand. And I've learned that composure isn't just about appearances. It's about action and trust." Cross glanced at her. And, she said, "it's about using those qualities when it matters most." They moved quickly to the station's main control hub. Elira coordinated with the human and Valen defense teams via holographic comms. Cross followed closely, scanning for intruders. "The saboteurs are trying to reach the reactor," she said. "We need to lock them out and reroute the system." Cross moved to assist her at the console. "I'll cover the corridors." "You manage the systems," Elira nodded. Her hands flew over the controls. She activated lockdown protocols, diverting energy to barriers and sealing maintenance shafts. Red warning lights flashed across the station, showing blocked passages. The enemy was persistent. Small units breached one of the lower rings, attempting to sabotage the energy core. Cross moved swiftly, intercepting them with precise fire and directing loyal forces to flank the attackers. Elira monitored the defense systems. She could see the station responding to her commands. Sensors confirmed that the saboteurs were trapped in isolated sections. "They're contained," she said, her voice steady. "Now we wait." Cross leaned on a console beside her. "You kept your composure under pressure. I've never seen anyone do it so well." She looked at him, surprised. "Even when I was terrified?" "Especially then," he said. Suddenly, the double agent's voice came through the comm system. "You think you've won, Princess? You are nothing without your guards, your soldiers, your human friend. Alone, you are powerless." Elira held the console firmly. "I am never alone," she said. "And no threat can succeed when people choose to act together." Cross glanced at her, impressed. She had taken command, inspiring loyalty through her words and actions. He had guided her through danger, but now she led. The saboteurs, realizing they had been trapped, attempted one last desperate attack on the reactor. Cross fired a precise shot, disabling the energy disruptor on one unit. Elira activated the final lockdown, sealing the remaining paths. Alarms blared, but the system held. "We've done it," she said quietly. Cross allowed himself a small smile. For now. The double agent attempted to flee, breaking the restraints. Cross lunged, but the princess acted quickly. She pressed a button on the console, activating a security net that pinned him to the floor. "Not so fast," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. "Your orders are over. The station is under my control." The agent struggled but realized the futility. He glared at her, then slumped in defeat. Elira had not only survived, she had outmaneuvered him using composure, intelligence, and decisive action. Cross-checked the station systems. Threat neutralized. All units accounted for. "You handled that exceptionally." Elira exhaled deeply, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She had faced attacks, betrayal, and chaos, and she had remained calm, focused, and effective. Her people's trust was reinforced, and the human soldier had proven that bravery and composure could exist side by side. She turned to Cross. "We could not have done this without you." He shrugged modestly. You could have done it yourself. I only guided you. You guided me, yes, she said, smiling, but I acted. I learned, and I have grown stronger. The station's leadership arrived moments later. Both human and Velan commanders entered the control hub, eyes wide as they assessed the situation. Illyra stepped forward, calm and composed, and briefed them on the events. She detailed the sabotage, the double agent, and the remaining threats. The leaders nodded in approval. Your courage and quick thinking saved Arcadia Station, said one human commander. And your guidance, Illyra added, glancing at Cross, was invaluable. Cross inclined his head. We acted as a team. That's what mattered. The station slowly returned to normal operations. Systems that had been disrupted were restored. The trapped saboteurs were apprehended. Communications were re-established across the station, and reinforcements were on the way. Illyra stood at the viewport looking out at the stars. Arcadia Station was safe, for now at least. Cross approached quietly. You did well, he said. She turned to him. No, we did well, together. He smiled faintly. I'll take that. For the first time in hours, Illyra allowed herself to relax. The terror, the uncertainty, the constant adrenaline, it was fading. She felt a sense of pride not just in surviving but in taking decisive action, in commanding respect through composure and courage. Cross remained by her side, ever vigilant, yet his posture suggested a shared relief. He had led her through danger, but she had grown into her own strength. I will need to thank my people, she said softly, and I must ensure this does not happen again. Cross nodded. You've learned that sometimes leadership is more than ceremony. It's action, Illyra smiled. Yes, and sometimes trust makes all the difference. He glanced at her, understanding. They had faced chaos, betrayal, and danger together, yet their composure, courage, and mutual trust had seen them through. In the quiet aftermath, the station's lights glimmered softly. The distant hum of engines reminded them of the life that continued beyond the corridors and consoles. Illyra straightened her shoulders. She had faced her fears, made difficult decisions, and commanded respect. She had discovered that composure was not only a shield but also a tool, a way to inspire courage in others, and to act decisively when it mattered most. Cross glanced at her one last time. You're ready, he said simply. She smiled. Yes, thanks to you. Outside, Arcadia Station drifted silently through space, a beacon of survival and resilience. Within its walls, Princess Illyra had proved her worth as a leader. And beside her, the human soldier who had guided, protected, and inspired her remained a steadfast ally. They had faced impossible odds, survived betrayal, and taken a stand. And in doing so, they had shown that courage, composure, and trust were stronger than any weapon. For Princess Illyra, the trials were over. For now. And she knew one truth above all. No challenge was insurmountable when composure met action, and when trust was placed wisely. Together, they would face whatever came next. Not as student and guide, not as human and alien, but as allies united by respect, courage, and the quiet power of composure. The orbital station floated like a silver crown above the blue curve of Earth. Its long rings turned slowly, and bright lights blinked against the black of space. This was the place where two powerful civilizations, the Earth Alliance and the Velan Empire, would meet for peace talks after years of cold tension. Diplomats, guards, and advisors had been arriving for days. Every corridor smelled of polished metal and new beginnings. Princess Illyra stood near a wide viewport inside her personal shuttle, watching the station grow larger. Her posture was straight, her hands folded neatly at her waist. She had practiced this pose many times before. It was the perfect image of calm royalty, but her stomach churned. She was about to step onto a station full of humans, a species her people often called unpredictable, stubborn, and dangerous. Her chief aide, a tall Velan named Rhinal, whispered something in their native tongue. Your Highness, remember your training. They will look for weakness. You must be strong. I am strong, she said softly, but her voice had a tremor she hoped he did not notice. When the shuttle docked, the doors opened to reveal a long corridor lined with guards from both sides. The humans wore dark uniforms with a blue star on the chest. The Valens wore silver armor that shimmered faintly. Between the two groups stood a single human soldier, tall and still with a face like carved stone. His eyes scanned everything calmly but sharply. This was Sergeant Daniel Cross. Elira had read his file. He was a decorated combat veteran, known for discipline and intuition. His assignment as part of her escort had been a surprise, arranged at the highest levels. She had expected someone more ceremonial. Instead, she found herself staring at a man whose presence seemed to fill the corridor. Cross gave a small, respectful nod. Princess Elira, welcome to Arcadia Station. I'm Sergeant Cross, assigned to your security detail. His voice was low and steady. Elira returned the nod, her chin lifting a little higher. Thank you, Sergeant. I am honored. She stepped forward, trying to ignore how loud her own footsteps sounded on the deck plates. The corridor was warmer than she expected, the air thicker. She felt her throat tighten and hoped no one saw her swallow hard. As they walked toward the main hall, Cross kept a careful distance at her side. His movements were economical, his eyes always moving. He did not fidget or glance at her in the way some guards had in the past. He simply did his job. Strangely, that made her feel safer than the presence of her own heavily armed attendants. When they reached the hall, diplomats and officers were already mingling. Humans spoke in their rapid, clipped language. Valens replied in measured tones. Holographic banners displayed both symbols, the Earth Alliance star and the Valen crest. The summit was meant to show equality, but Elira could feel the tension hanging like a curtain. She remembered her father's words. We do not bend to humans. We show our composure. So she stood straighter, raised her chin and smiled with perfect calm, even though her pulse raced. Cross guided her to a small reception area where food and drinks from both cultures were offered. He remained a few steps behind her, but she sensed his presence like a solid wall. When a human diplomat stepped too close, Cross shifted slightly, placing himself between them without a word. It was a small movement, but Elira noticed. She wondered if he knew how protective he seemed. The reception began with a short speech from an Earth Alliance representative, a tall woman with silver hair. Then Elira was invited to speak. She had rehearsed her words in their language many times. She spoke clearly, thanking them for the invitation, expressing hope for cooperation. Her accent was noticeable but not harsh. When she finished, polite applause followed. As she stepped down from the podium, her foot caught on the edge of the platform. A tiny mistake. She felt herself tilt forward. Before she could recover, a firm hand steadied her elbow. It was Cross. He did not look at her, just helped her balance, then stepped back as if nothing had happened. Elira's cheeks grew warm. She nodded slightly in thanks. The human soldier's touch had been steady and unshaking, like a pillar of stone. She could not remember the last time someone had reached for her without ceremony. Later, when the crowd thinned, Cross approached her quietly. Princess, the station is secure, but I'd like to keep your movements limited to certain areas. Standard precaution. Of course, she replied, trying to sound calm. I trust your judgment, he gave a small nod. Appreciated. I'll stay nearby. Elira excused herself from the others and walked to a side balcony overlooking the docking bay. The large windows showed the glitter of ships arriving and leaving. She rested her hands on the railing. Her heart was still beating fast. She had almost stumbled in front of everyone, in front of a human soldier. She was supposed to be composed, untouchable, yet here she was, feeling strangely unsteady. She heard footsteps behind her. Cross had followed at a respectful distance. Princess, he said softly, are you all right? I am perfectly fine, she answered too quickly. He didn't push. It's a lot to take in, he said. Different environment, different gravity. Happens to everyone. His tone was calm and practical, not pitying. She found it oddly comforting. I have prepared my whole life for diplomacy, she said. But standing here, it feels different. Cross folded his arms. Everyone feels pressure. Even soldiers. She turned to study him. His face was unreadable but not cold. There was a quiet steadiness in his eyes that she had not expected. You are very direct, she said. Helps keep things simple, he replied. Before she could answer, a small alert flashed on his wrist console. His eyes narrowed slightly. Excuse me, Princess. He moved a few steps away, speaking quietly into his comm. His expression did not change, but she sensed a shift in the air, like the moment before a storm. When he returned, his tone was still even but firmer. There's been a minor security issue in the docking bay. Nothing for you to worry about yet, but I'd prefer to keep you away from public areas until we check it out. Elira tilted her head. Security issue? Could be nothing. Could be someone in the wrong place. We'll handle it. She hesitated. Her instinct was to demand full information. She was a princess, after all. But something about his calm tone made her hold back. She nodded. Very well. Cross signaled to her aides to move closer. We'll return to your quarters for now, he said. As they walked back through the corridors, Elira felt her nerves tighten again. Her own bodyguards were murmuring among themselves, but it was Cross who seemed fully in control, his eyes scanning every door and intersection. She realized she had been watching him more than the walls around her, as if his composure was a map she could follow. They reached the private section of the station reserved for the Velan delegation. Elira stepped inside her suite, its curved walls glowing softly in Velan colors. Cross stayed outside, speaking quietly with security officers. When he finally entered, he gave her a small nod. All clear for now, he said. But we'll maintain double watches. She tried to keep her voice steady. Thank you, Sergeant. You have been attentive. Just doing my job, Princess. When he left, she sat down on a smooth white bench near the window. She stared at the planet below, its oceans shining like liquid glass. Her fingers tightened in her lap. She had never felt so far from home. Reinl entered, bowing slightly. You handled yourself well, he said. The humans respect strength, and you have a strong protector. Elira looked up. Sergeant Cross. Yes, he has a reputation for loyalty and courage. Perhaps it is wise to have him close. She did not answer. Her mind replayed the moment he steadied her at the podium, his hand like iron yet gentle. She wondered why that small act unsettled her more than any speech. Far outside, a small maintenance ship drifted near one of the station's docking arms. Inside it, shadowy figures adjusted equipment, their faces hidden. A coded message flashed silently between them. Target confirmed. Phase 1 begins soon. Back in her quarters, Elira rose and drew the heavy curtains. She took a slow, steadying breath. She would not show weakness, not here, not in front of the human soldier. But deep inside, a question had begun to form. A question she could not yet name. The corridors of Arcadia Station felt quieter the next morning, but Sergeant Daniel Cross did not relax. He had been awake for hours, reviewing security reports and double-checking the duty roster. Something about the small security issue in the docking bay still bothered him. It had been reported as a misplaced shipment container. To him, it looked more like a deliberate probe of the station's blind spots. Princess Elira stood by the window of her suite, wearing a new formal gown woven from silver fibers that caught the light. She practiced her breathing, steady and deep. Today she would meet with key human diplomats. Today she had to be perfect. But her eyes kept flicking to the door where Cross stood, a silent pillar. Reinl entered with a datapad. Your Highness, the human delegation will arrive in 30 minutes. Elira nodded. Thank you. Her voice was calm, but her fingers twisted together. She stopped herself and placed her hands at her sides. Sergeant Cross, she said, is everything secure? Cross gave a small nod. So far. But we'll take a different route to the conference room today. Different? Reinl frowned. Why? Cross's eyes stayed on the door. Because someone used a stolen maintenance badge last night. They tried to access your hallway. They didn't get far. But I'm not going to Guy. The safe room was quiet, but the tension inside was heavy. Princess Elira sat on a narrow bench, her hands folded in her lap. Her gown was wrinkled from the climb and the rush through the maintenance tunnels. She could still feel the adrenaline buzzing in her veins, but she refused to let it show. Across the room, Sergeant Daniel Cross checked his weapon and scanned the small viewport that looked toward the corridor. They'll try again, he said simply. We need to move before backup arrives. Elira nodded, rising carefully. She could not afford to stumble now. Her people expected her to act composed, even in danger. Yet every step reminded her of how vulnerable she had been just moments ago. Cross looked at her and gave a brief nod. Follow me. Stay close. Trust me, she swallowed and obeyed. The phrase was simple, but somehow it carried weight. She did not want to admit how much she already depended on him. Cross led them through a hidden access hatch at the far end of the room. The tunnel beyond was narrow and dimly lit, the walls lined with pipes that hummed faintly. The air smelled metallic and faintly of ozone. Cross moved quickly, almost silently, guiding her through twists and turns she had no hope of remembering. Her guards followed, but were less steady than Cross. One stumbled over a loose pipe, and she glanced at him with impatience, but he recovered quickly. Illyra could not help noticing the difference between her people's guards and the human soldier. His every move was precise, efficient, and careful. Halfway through the tunnel, Cross paused and gestured for silence. He crouched, listening. A faint hiss echoed from ahead. "Drones," he whispered. "Multiple. They're following the same path we took." Illyra's chest tightened. "How many?" "Enough to be dangerous," he said. "We need a plan." Cross moved closer to the wall, scanning a panel embedded in it. His fingers danced over controls until a section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow side passage. "This way," he said. "It's tight, but it avoids the main corridors." "Keep low." Illyra bent slightly, following him into the passage. She could hear the hum of the drones getting louder in the main corridor. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced them to her sides. Not here, not in front of him. The passage twisted downward, and the hum of the station's life systems grew distant. Cross checked a small device in his hand, then nodded. "We can get to the shuttle docks through the lower rings. It's risky, but faster than the elevators." She glanced at the narrow walls. "I am not trained for this." "You are trained to survive," Cross replied. "Just stay close." Illyra's heart beat faster, but she kept moving. She had no choice. The lower rings were dark, mostly empty of personnel. Only the emergency lights glowed faintly, casting long shadows. As they approached the docking bay, the hum of engines and distant chatter became clearer. Cross stopped and scanned the area through a viewport. "They're ready," he muttered. Red lights pulsed along the corridor, signaling that drones had arrived at the junction ahead. "We need to move now, or they'll trap us." Illyra's throat tightened. She realized this was no longer a test of composure. This was survival. She swallowed and followed Cross through a side hatch into an even smaller maintenance tunnel. The tunnel narrowed quickly. Illyra had to duck low, scraping her shoulders against the walls. Cross stayed just ahead, his movements calm, but his eyes darted to every sound. Suddenly, a loud clatter echoed from the corridor behind them. One of the Valen guards had been discovered and incapacitated by pursuing drones. Illyra froze, but Cross motioned her forward. "Go, faster," he hissed. They sprinted through the narrow tunnel, her gown catching on a pipe and slowing her. She pulled free and nearly stumbled into Cross, who caught her by the elbow without breaking stride. "You'll be fine," he said. His voice was calm, but she could feel the intensity behind it. The tunnel ended at a small maintenance hatch leading to a service catwalk above the docking bay. Cross checked it before opening. Below, small ships were docked and workers were hurrying about, unaware of the danger. "They'll try to block our exit," Cross said. "We need to act fast." Illyra took a deep breath. She had never climbed such heights before. The catwalk was narrow, suspended over a drop of several meters. Her fingers tightened on the railing. "Trust me," Cross said again. She nodded. They moved carefully along the catwalk, staying close to the wall. Cross paused and listened, then pointed toward a small shuttle at the far end. "That's our ride. Move quickly but quietly." Illyra's legs shook, but she followed. Her mind raced with calculations. What if the drones caught up? What if someone tried to intercept them at the shuttle? She swallowed her fear and focused on Cross's steady movements. As they reached the shuttle, two small drones appeared at the far end of the catwalk, spinning toward them with glowing red optics. Cross raised his weapon, firing precise shots that disabled one. The second swerved toward Illyra. "Duck," he shouted. She dropped low just as the drone zipped past, grazing her shoulder. Sparks flew. Cross fired again, hitting it perfectly this time. Illyra's pulse raced. She swallowed hard and stood quickly. "Is it over?" "For now," Cross said. "Get inside the shuttle." Inside the shuttle, the cockpit was lit with soft blue controls. Cross took the pilot seat and Illyra stepped back to catch her breath. She felt her hands shaking, but she straightened. She could not show weakness even here. "Can you fly this?" she asked. Cross gave a small smile. "I can get us out. Don't worry about the rest." She watched him, fascinated by his calm focus. He seemed entirely in control of every moving piece around him. She wondered how humans could stay so steady under pressure. The engines hummed as the shuttle powered up. Outside, the drones retreated back into the shadows. The lower rings of the station were a maze of lights and steel. Illyra pressed herself against the wall, watching Cross manipulate the controls with ease. The shuttle lifted off the catwalk, navigating between docking arms and larger ships. Elira's stomach lurched at the sudden movement. She gripped the seat in front of her. Cross glanced at her. "It's okay. You'll be fine." "I hope so," she whispered. She could feel sweat beading on her forehead. "I am not accustomed to this." "You'll adapt," he said. "Humans learn quickly." "So can you." She gave him a small, wry smile. Despite everything, his words were comforting. She had never trusted anyone so quickly. And yet she did. As the shuttle cleared the lower rings, a warning flashed on Cross's panel. "Incoming," he shouted. A small craft moved to intercept them. "Evasive maneuvers," Cross ordered, twisting the shuttle sharply. Red lights flashed inside as gravity shifted them sideways. Elira held tight, trying not to scream. The craft fired, but Cross anticipated every move. He darted left, then right, using the station's rotating rings for cover. Sparks flew outside as the attacker's shots ricocheted harmlessly. "You are fearless," Elira whispered. Cross glanced at her briefly. "Focused," he corrected. "Fear slows you down." Her chest rose and fell. She realized she had been holding her breath. Fear had been there, yes, but she had followed him without hesitation, and somehow she had survived. Finally, the attacker retreated. Cross exhaled, checking the shuttle's instruments. "We're clear for now," he said. Elira slumped into a seat. Her hands shook, but she tried to hide it. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know what would have happened without you." Cross looked at her. "You did your part too. You stayed calm, followed instructions. That matters as much as any weapon." She turned her eyes to him. For the first time, she saw not only a soldier but a human being. Strong, disciplined, capable, and yet somehow kind. The shuttle moved away from the station, leaving the chaos behind. Elira pressed her hands together and took a deep breath. She had survived this first escape, but she knew it was only the beginning. Outside the viewport, Arcadia Station glinted in the sunlight, peaceful to the untrained eye. Inside, the princess and the soldier sat together, both alert, both aware that danger still lurked. And in that quiet moment, Elira realized something new. She could trust him. For now, that trust might be the most powerful weapon she had. The shuttle drifted silently in the shadow of Arcadia Station, its engines idling as Sergeant Daniel Cross scanned the nearby sectors for threats. Princess Elira sat across from him, her hands folded neatly in her lap, though her mind raced. She had survived the chase through the maintenance tunnels, the drones, and the intercepting craft, yet she could not ignore the fact that the danger had only just begun. "Where are we going?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Cross glanced at her, eyes sharp. "I've identified a group of mercenaries who are part of the plot against you. They are divided. Some are loyal to the rival faction, but others are being forced to comply. If we can reach them first, we might gain an advantage." Elira frowned. "Negotiate with your enemies?" she whispered. "That is unusual for a princess." Cross tilted his head. "Sometimes the best way to survive is to understand who is on your side. We'll approach carefully. You may need to speak directly to them." The princess straightened, forcing herself to adopt the calm composure her people demanded. She had never spoken to a mercenary before, and yet she trusted this human soldier to guide her. The shuttle glided closer to a hidden docking platform, a place rarely used by station personnel. The mercenaries' small crafts were parked there, and figures moved cautiously among them. Cross activated the comms. "Princess," he said, "I'll go first, but you must